my crafty friends, this is Marla with Mad About Cards and Crafts with my final CottageCutz design team project for 2023. Today's card features the Christmas owl, so don't put your Christmas dies away just yet. Here's a look at that die set. It does have two cute owls. We have a holly branch. I am going to alter this today just a little bit to create a Valentine's Day card. I'm going to omit the holly leaves, the berries, and the Santa hat. I will be replacing the Santa hat with that adorable bow from the Ginger Friends. Let's jump into our project. I'm going to start by doing some Copic coloring. I do have neutral grays, so I have a light set and then I have a much darker set. I've cut out my images and separated the ones that I'm going to use from the ones that I'm not going to use. And I'm going to start with, I believe the cap is on the screen. It should be somewhere around a N2. I'm going to lay down a base layer, and you'll notice that even though I have layering pieces for the heads, I'm still going over those areas with that neutral so that when I lay it on top, I'm not going to have any white peeking through if something gets aligned just a little bit off, or if you look at it from different angles. Once I get that neutral laid down, I'm going to use my darkest color, as you can see, which is going to be my neutral 9, and I'm going to use a flicking motion. So I'm using the very tip of my Copic marker. You'll notice I turn my paper because I do flick better in certain directions. So I flicked from the middle of the nose up, and then of course I added some of that darker color to the other areas of the heads and the bodies. I am coming back in with a second neutral color, which should be somewhere around an N7, and I will just add some more flicks on top, and it looks like I have white space, but I really don't have white space. It's that layer of N2, because the N9 and the N7 is so much darker, it gives the appearance of the white. By adding that flicking motion, I think it gives the look of the feathers. I think you get a little bit more texture. For my card today, I went with a black owl. I thought that they were absolutely beautiful. And you notice that I'm covering up the body with another neutral color. This should be an N0. I'm going to lay that down, and then I'm going to use another neutral color to add a flicking motion and just add a few feathers to the body. You'll see that I started with the part that's going to be covered up, and that was to make sure that I liked it. So if you want to try something out when you're working with these CottageCutz dies, there are layering elements to them, and if you just use the under portion that's going to get covered up, if you mess something up, then you don't have to worry about it, and you can just cover it with your layering piece. So I wanted to make sure that I was going to like the texture on the quote-unquote white parts of the body. I did, and so you can see that I'm just adding a little bit of it to the layering pieces, and then of course I colored up the face, adding a little bit of the shading to the left and the right side. I'm going to start putting these together. I didn't show it, but initially I colored the beak and I colored the feet with a yellowish color, like a yellow orange, and it looked like a penguin. And so I looked up owls, and I realized that their talons typically are brown, or they can have a black tone to them. So I just went ahead with that neutral 9 again, and I covered up that, you can see it right there, I colored up that orange color, went right over the top of it. If it didn't cover up, I would have just cut 2 new pieces for those areas. But note to self, don't add the orange to the beak and to the talons because they really don't have those colors. For the eyes, I did add a little bit of yellow. I am going to come in and add the black pupils to it, but owls tend to have yellow eyes, and so I went ahead and added the yellow to the embossed or indented areas of the eyes. For the hat, I used, again, the neutral colors, so an N9, an N7, and an N5. And then for the male, I'm going to color up his scarf and the sash on his hat with some red. And so I started with an R24, and then I brought in the darker color on the left and the right, which was the R29, blended it out with an R27, and finished it off with the R24. And that's going to give a nice bright pop of color to my male owl. I'll add the sash to the hat with a little bit of glue. And then when I start putting my owls together, you're going to notice that the male owl on the right-hand side, I'm going to tilt his head. I wanted these to look like the birds were in love and that they were snuggling up on the branch, and so I gave that little tilt to the head, which is going to be to the right-hand side. For the female, I did color her scarf up. I started with an R20, and then I added to the left and the right side of that scarf my darkest color, which was an R22, blended it with an R21, and then added a little bit more of that R20 to the center to give a little bit of a highlight, and we're going to start assembling our pieces. I added the scarf first. I did purposely leave a little bit of a gap between the scarf, the top of the scarf, and the head. You're going to see that right here. Now, if you don't want that gap, you certainly could layer the head on top so that it goes over part of that scarf. But I'm making sure to get that nice tilt. The owl on the left was the one that was supposed to have the Santa hat, and you'll notice that owls do have ears on top of their head, and that owl doesn't have any. So to remedy that, I went ahead and cut out that bow from the Ginger Friends, and I colored it up using the same color combination that I used for her scarf. So I started with the R20, I blended it out with an R22 and blended again with an R21 to get that nice pink that I have for the hat. I wasn't sure where I was going. I've talked about this before. I do not create with anything in particular in mind for the majority of my creations. So I create on the fly. As I'm looking at my images, I go to my stash. For this one, I'm going to be using some pattern paper. The pattern paper is an old, I have one pack, two packs actually, two different ones that are from Prima Marketing. And that is, I just tried to find vintage style because of the hat on the owl. It just made me think of A Christmas Carol, and I wanted something that was a little bit more old world, and so that's how I chose the pattern paper, based on the colors and the style of the paper. I like to add detail, and so I added some stripes to the red scarf, and then I added polka dots to the right scarf. Polka dots to the pink scarf, sorry about that. And then here's that bow that I colored up off screen. I'm going to go ahead and add those same polka dots to the bow, and we'll attach it to our owl's head, and it's going to change it from looking more like a penguin to looking a little bit more like an owl. As I talked about, I did not add the holly leaves or the berries to the branch. You can see the branch is just a plain branch like you would see in the winter months. I colored that up with an E49, 47, and I think maybe a 44. Here's that pattern paper I was talking about. I did use an arch die from my stash, and I don't have very much red in this paper. You'll see there's a little red rose at the bottom of this arch. So I added some lumberjack plaid to the edges of this, and that's going to tie in a little bit more of that red. That love die, or that love ephemera piece, that came from one of the paper pads. I just fussy cut it out, and again I'm adding that lumberjack plaid to the edges to tie in that red. I thought about going with a red bow, but then I found the melon color one that is from this Brutus Monroe pack, and I thought that it really blended with it beautifully. It has a hint of the red tone to it, so for me, I thought that it just blended with everything a little bit better. I'm going to use some masking tape, and I'm going to tape the ribbon to the center of this card panel. This is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card panel. I will bring in a card base that's the exact same size, so this is going to be an A2 size card. When I looked at the owls, I thought that they would make a really cute Valentine card because it looks, as I mentioned, like they are just snuggling up for the winter, and I thought that it would be perfect to use for an anniversary card. You can certainly change the colors and the themes throughout the season. You can add flowers to the branch, and you could make it an anniversary or a wedding card. So the owls are really very versatile. They are not just for the Christmas season. When you look at your dies, just kind of look at some of the elements that you can change out, such as the Santa hat for a bow. I've glued everything together, and now I'm going to start building my scene. I need to know where that branch needs to go. I don't want it to go too high, and I want to make sure that that lace at the bottom of that arch is showing. So I'm wanting that love to be up a little bit higher. Once I bring that branch down, I am going to kind of hold it in place to see where it should be. I'm going to lift it up, and I'll add some glue, and then I'll make a little bit of an adjustment. I leave part of the branches not glued down, so I'm only gluing down the middle portion so that the twigs that are at the bottom and the one that's at the very end, that I can kind of lift those up and give it a little bit of dimension. I'm going to add foam tape to the back of each of my owls. Now this first one, I'm going to add a full piece of foam tape, and I'll adhere him to the right side of the branch. And then the little girl owl, she's going to be snuggling up, and because she's going to be overlapping the largest owl, I only need to add a small piece of foam tape to the left side of her. So you notice I'm cutting that foam tape down. It's going to be a much thinner strip, and I'm making sure that it's all the way over onto the left side of her so that when I add her over the top, I'm not going to have her being lumpy and bumpy on top of the owl on the right. All right, so I did tie a double bow off camera, and I'm going to use my glue to glue it down. And then once I glue this down off camera, I did end up cutting my tails. I'm going to add some foam tape to the back of this Love Ephemera piece that I cut out, and that's going to give that same dimension. And then I'll glue my panel to a top folding card base. I did want to mention that there is a giveaway in this video. I will be giving away the Christmas owls. In order to qualify, all you need to do is make sure you're a subscriber, like the video, and leave a comment. And the winner from my last video, which was the festive elephants, I will have that linked at the end of this video. Her name is Dee Wilson, so congratulations, Dee Wilson. All you need to do is email Mary Marsh. Her email address is in the description box below. Let her know that you're the winner of the festive elephants. She'll make sure those get out to you soon. I hope you all have a very happy new year. I want to thank you so much for supporting the CottageCutz team this past 2022, and I hope to see you back here again in 2023. Here's a look at the coloring and the dimension on my card today. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks so much for watching.